I found out I'd won the lottery 10 minutes before I ruined my life.
Which is a very American way to learn that timing is a comedian with a cruel streak. The ticket was folded in my wallet like an old apology I never sent.
I'd bought it out of habit, the way some men buy breath mints or lies.
The clerk had wished me luck. I remember that part clearly. Luck,
it turns out, has a sense of irony sharp enough to shave with. I was 27.
Wearing a suit that still smelled faintly of ambition and cheap cologne. Standing in a fluorescent-lit office where the future was negotiated in square footage and percentages. When the numbers lined up, I didn't hoop or pray or call my mother.
I just smiled.
A small, precise smile. The kind men practice when they think they've beaten the system. 10 minutes later, I walked into a bar and told the only woman who had ever loved me that I was leaving, not leaving her. I said, just leaving us.
Temporarily. That's the first lie men like me learn to tell. That time is a flexible thing. That hearts come with pause buttons. Her name was Eleanor. Everyone called her Ellie except me. I liked the full name.
It made her sound like a decision instead of a coincidence. She was sitting at a corner table with a notebook open, pretending to write while actually watching the door, waiting for me. She always waited like that, as if hope were a polite habit. I told her about the offer, the job, the city,
the money that would come later, inevitably, like gravity. I told her she wouldn't like it there. I told her I needed to do this alone. I told her all the reasonable things men say when they're about to make an unreasonable choice. She didn't cry. That part hurt more than tears would have. She just nodded once, as if filing me away under misjudgments. All right, she said.
Happy New Year then. It was December 31st. Of course it was. Life loves symmetry when it's being cruel. 40 years later, I'm standing in my kitchen in Connecticut,
holding a glass of champagne I don't remember pouring, watching snow fall like it's rehearsed this scene all week.
The house is quiet in that expensive way silence gets when it's padded with money.
Marble counters.
Sub-zero fridge.
Art I bought because someone told me I should. I'm a millionaire now.
Several times over, depending on the market and my mood.
I won every professional lottery a man can win.
Promotions.
Exits. My name on glass walls. I became the kind of man younger men hate quietly and older. Men respect without warmth. What I never became is the kind of man who stops thinking about the moment before everything went right and wrong at the same time. Tonight is New Year's Eve again.
Another one.
They keep happening, no matter how convincingly you ignore them. I'm 82. That sounds older when I say it out loud. My doctor says it with a frown. My accountant says it with a calculator. I say it with a drink. I wasn't planning on company. I rarely do. Parties require pretending you don't know how temporary everyone is.
But earlier this afternoon, my assistant called to tell me a charity I half remember funding had sent over a guest for the evening. Some kind of community outreach nonsense. Young professionals connecting with donors.
Humanizing wealth, as if money were a frightened animal that needed reassurance. I almost said no.
Then I heard myself say yes,
which is how trouble usually starts at my age. She arrives just before 9. Third-person perspective, briefly. The old man straightens his sweater like it matters, checks his reflection in the darkened window, wonders when he started caring about first impressions again. Her name is Claire. She's in her early 40s. Give or take a life mistake or two.
Smart eyes, tired smile, the kind of face that's learned how to recover quickly. She shakes my hand firmly, like someone who's had to be taken seriously by people who didn't want to. Thank you for having me, she says.
They told me you don't usually do this.
I don't, I say. But it's a special occasion. The planet completed another lap without my permission. She laughs.
It's an easy sound. Untrained.
Dangerous. We sit.
We talk.
Weather. Work.
She's in non-profit consulting, which means she spends her days explaining morality to corporations and her nights pretending it doesn't exhaust her.
I tell her I'm retired, which is true in the way old lions are retired. At some point, without warning, she mentions her mother. She loved New Year's, Claire says, swirling her drink. Said it made sense. One clean line between before and after. The room shifts. Just slightly.
Like a floor that remembers being a boat. What was her name?
I ask, already knowing the answer. Already praying I'm wrong. Eleanor, she says.
But everyone called her Ellie. Time doesn't stop. That's a lie movies tell.
What it does is narrow.
The world compresses until there's only one sound, one memory, one mistake with perfect posture. I smile.
Of course I do. I've been practicing for decades. That's a beautiful name, I say.
She must have been a remarkable woman, Claire smiles back, unaware she's sitting across from the man who taught her mother the exact cost of believing in futures. Outside, fireworks begin warming up, popping experimentally in the distance. I raise my glass.
To the new year.
To lotteries.
To slow bombs with very long fuses, and somewhere between the bubbles and the silence, I realize the universe has finally decided to collect its winnings.
Claire talks about her mother the way people talk about cities they left too early fondly, but with a defensive edge, as if daring the past to contradict her. She raised me alone, Claire says.
Never complained.
Or if she did, it was always disguised as a joke.
She had this talent for turning disappointment into punchlines. I nod at the right places.
I've been nodding professionally my entire adult life.
Boards, investors, senators. Turns out the skill transfers easily to moral catastrophes. She sounds formidable. I say she was, Claire replies, then smiles.
Stubborn too.
I get that from her. According to her, stubbornness is just patience with better branding. That was Eleanor's line. Almost word for word. She used it once when I told her she was wasting her talent waiting tables while writing in that notebook of hers.
I remember thinking how clever she was. I also remember thinking how inconvenient. I sip my champagne too quickly. The bubbles sting like small accusations. Third person again. Briefly, the old man across the table feels the floor tilt. Not enough to fall.
Just enough to realize gravity has been lying in wait. What did she do? I ask. For work, I mean. She wrote, Claire says.
Short stories.
Essays. Never got famous. But she got published.
Small magazines.
Local papers.
She liked being read by people who actually cared. I almost choke.
Eleanor had once told me she didn't want to be famous.
She wanted to be necessary to someone.
At the time, I had nodded sympathetically while mentally calculating office space in Chicago. She passed away 5 years ago. Claire adds casually, as if discussing a cancelled show. Cancer. Fast.
Unfair. You know how it goes. I do. I've known many kinds of endings.
Some come with warnings. Some just knock. I'm sorry, I say. And this time, it isn't a reflex.
It lands somewhere closer to the truth than I'm comfortable with. Thank you, she says. She would have liked you, I think. That sentence sits between us, humming softly, like a live wire pretending to be decor. We move on.
We always do.
People have a remarkable instinct for survival in conversation.
We talk about travel.
About the absurdity of New Year's resolutions. She asked me how I made my money slowly, I say, and by disappointing several people who trusted me. She laughs, assuming I'm joking. I let her daughter tea 10:30. I suggest a walk outside.
The snow has stopped, leaving everything polished and deceptive. The air smells like cold metal and celebration. Somewhere nearby, someone is testing fireworks with the enthusiasm of a child and the judgment of an adult who's stopped caring. Claire pulls her coat tighter. It's beautiful, she says.
Quiet. My mom loved quiet snow.
Said it made the world look forgiven. I close my eyes for half a second. Eleanor said that too. Same words, same cadence. She used to say snow is nature's way of hitting reset without asking permission. We walk slowly down the driveway.
My joints complain, but I ignore them.
Tonight, pain feels like an accessory I've earned. Can I ask you something? Claire says. You already did, I reply.
But go ahead. I'm feeling generous, she smiles.
Why didn't you ever have kids?
The question is innocent. Most knives are. I was married, I say.
Briefly.
To my work mostly. That sounds lonely. It was efficient. She studies me for a moment. My mom used to say efficiency is what people choose when they're afraid of wanting too much. I stop walking. Claire notices.
Sorry.
She had opinions. About everything. No, I say.
She was right. We stand there. The old man and the living echo, surrounded by snow that remembers nothing. The past presses in, polite but persistent. Inside, the clock ticks toward midnight. Time, the undefeated champion, back at the house. I pour us another drink.
This one I remember pouring. Claire wonders, admiring the art with the careful neutrality of someone trained not to offend owners. This place feels curated, she says. Like a museum that forgot to put up explanations. That's accurate, I say.
Most of my life was chosen by committees. She turns to me.
Do you regret it?
There it is. The question people ask old men. Because they assume age comes with honesty. Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it just comes with better lies.
Yes, I say, she blinks. Surprised by the speed of my answer. That was easy, she says. I've had time to rehearse. The TV flickers on automatically, counting down cities already celebrating. New York appears, all lights and noise and optimism.
The crowd roars.
They always do.
They don't know what's waiting for them yet. Claire checks her phone.
I should call my daughter soon. She's with friends, but we have a tradition. Midnight. No matter what, you have a daughter, I say. Yeah.
Lucy.
She's 16 and smarter than me, which is inconvenient. Something in my chest tightens. Eleanor had wanted a daughter. She'd said it once, offhandedly, as if testing the idea on the air.
I'd responded with a joke about timing. Timing again.
Always timing. The countdown begins. 10.
9. Claire smiles at me. I'm glad I came tonight. 8.
7. So am I say.
And mean it in a way that scares me. 6.
5. We stand there.
Strangers linked by a woman who once believed in clean lines. Between before and after. 4.
3.
Claire raises her glass. To new beginnings, she says. 2.
1. The room explodes with noise from the screen.
Fireworks outside answer back. A new year arrives like it always does, loud, confident, uninvited. Claire hugs me.
A brief, warm, human thing.
I freeze, then return it. Her coat smells faintly of vanilla and winter. Happy New Year, she says. Happy New Year. I reply. She steps back, already reaching for her phone, already moving into her future. And I stand there,
holding the weight of a truth that has waited 40 years to be relevant again, realizing that winning the lottery was never the miracle. This was, and miracles, I'm learning very late in the game,
are rarely kind about how they introduce themselves.
Claire stays another hour, not because she has to,
because leaving feels abrupt. Like slamming a door in a house that might still be speaking. She talks to her daughter at midnight, voice softening into a version of herself I haven't earned the right to see for long.
I pretend to study the condensation on my glass while listening anyway.
Lucy is out, safe, loud, alive.
Claire reminds her to drink water, to text when she gets home, to remember that beginnings don't require permission. She ends the call with I love you, and I feel something old and underused stir. Like a muscle no one warned me I'd miss. After she hangs up, she notices me watching, not prying, observing, the way old men do when they run out of rehearsed reactions. You okay? She asks. I'm learning, I say, slowly.
My specialty, she smiles, but it carries a crease now. Curiosity with caution.
She's good at that balance. Eleanor was too. Around 1:30, Claire checks the time and apologizes for staying so late, which is generous of her considering I invited her into a house that has been waiting years for a voice that wasn't mine at the door.
She hesitates. Thank you, she says again.
For the conversation and the quiet. You're welcome back any time, I say. And then, because honesty is feeling reckless tonight, I hope you come. She nods. And for a second, I wonder if she sees something in my face I'm not aware I'm wearing. After she leaves, the house exhales.
That's the only way I can describe it.
As if it had been holding its breath, afraid of being caught wanting. I don't sleep.
Old men rarely do after emotional earthquakes.
Instead, I sit in my study, lights low, surrounded by shelves of books I've read halfway and trophies I've forgotten the names of. At 3 in the morning, I open a drawer I haven't touched in years. Inside, a single photograph, creased defiant.
Eleanor on a fire escape. How wild. Notebook on her knees, laughing at something I said off camera. I look younger. Worse, I look certain. I tell myself I won't do it at T4.
I'm still telling myself that be where sunrise.
I've already done it in my head 100 times. The next morning later than morning.
Really, I call my assistant and cancel everything. I don't explain. People rarely ask old men for reasons when they sound tired. I drive. I shouldn't, probably. But the road has always been honest with me.
It doesn't pretend you're in control. Claire's address is on a charity form I could claim I forgot to shred.
The lie barely tries. Her house is modest.
Blue shutters. A tree out front with ornaments that look like they were put up by committee, meaning a family with opinions.
I sit in the car for a full 5 minutes before getting out.
Practicing expressions like a man preparing to knock on a door that might open into his own indictment. She answers wearing a sweater and suspicion. Mr.
Harris, she says, is everything okay?
May I come in? I ask. I read a story. Or maybe an apology.
I'm not sure which yet. She studies me.
Then steps aside. The living room smells like coffee and citrus cleaner. Life. Lucy is gone, or hiding.
Teenagers are experts at absence. I didn't want to do this, I say, standing to straight, hands folded like a defendant who's learned posture from television.
But I don't think I get another chance. Claire crosses her arms.
Not defensive, protective.
Another chance at what? Telling the truth before it rots. I take a breath.
The long kind. The kind Eleanor used to insist on when I rushed explanations like they were exits. I knew your mother, I say, her face stills.
A lot of people did. I loved her, I say.
Once, I left her. On New Year's Eve, silence expands. It's very good at that. Claire's voice is careful now. Okay, she was pregnant, I continue. And this is where I finally stop pretending I don't know how explosions work.
She didn't tell me. I found out years later.
It wasn't you. She lost the baby. Claire exhales, sharp. She sits. She never told me that. She says. She didn't tell me either, I say.
Until a letter.
Years later.
After she was already married. After I was already someone else. Claire looks at me like I've just rearranged a room she thought she knew by heart. So, why are you telling me this?
She asks, because I've spent 40 years believing I was just ambitious, I say. And last night, I realized ambition was just the alibi. Her eyes shine, but she doesn't cry.
Eleanor's daughter, unmistakably. She loved someone once. Claire says quietly. Before my father.
She never said who. I know. Claire stands. Walks to the window. Snow again.
Persistent, patient. She forgave you, she says.
It's not a question. I don't know, I reply.
I know she moved on. I know she built a life. I know she taught her daughter how to turn disappointment into punchlines. Claire turns back to me.
She taught me not to let men confuse fear with destiny. I nod. That sounds like her. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I say. I'm asking for the chance to be present.
In whatever way you decide is tolerable. Claire studies me for a long time. You're an old man, she says.
With money and regret and a very inconvenient conscience. That's accurate. She almost laughs. Almost. I don't know what to do with this. She admits. That makes two of us.
I say. She opens the door.
Not kicking me out. Just creating air. Go home, she says.
Let me think. This isn't a New Year's miracle. It's a negotiation. I nod.
Gratitude is a quiet thing when it's real.as. I walk back to my car. I feel lighter. Not absolved, but acknowledged.
Which, it turns out, is a close cousin, third person. Briefly. The old man drives away knowing the bomb has started ticking louder, not toward destruction, but toward something far more dangerous, connection. And for the first time since the night, I won and lost everything. I'm not trying to outrun it.
Waiting turns out to be harder than confession.
Confession has momentum.
Waiting just sits there, checking its watch, reminding you that time has always been the senior partner. Claire doesn't call for 3 days.
I don't call either. This is not restraint.
This is fear dressed up as manners. On the 4th day, she texts, coffee, public place.
No speeches. I stare at the phone like it's a medical diagnosis written in polite font. We meet at a CF halfway between her world and mine.
Which mostly means it has decent coffee and no one looking to sell me anything. Claire arrives first.
I arrive early anyway.
Old habit.
When you've disappointed enough people, punctuality becomes a kind of apology. She looks different.
Not worse. Sharper. Like someone who spent a few nights arguing with herself and won most of the rounds. No speeches, she reminds me as she sits. I gave them up for Lent.
I say. She doesn't smile.
Fair. We order.
The barista calls my name wrong. I don't correct him.
I'm in a mood where accuracy feels optional. Claire wraps her hands around her cup. I read my mom's journals, she says.
The ones she never showed anyone. My chest tightens, like it's bracing for weather. She wrote about you, Claire continues.
Not a lot, which somehow made it worse. I nod. Eleanor never wasted ink on things she couldn't forgive yet. She never blamed you, Claire says. She blamed timing, youth, the myth that there's always a later. That myth made me very rich, I say quietly, and very alone, she replies, without cruelty. Just math, we sit with that. I didn't bring you here to punish you, Claire says. If I wanted to do that, I'd invite you to Thanksgiving, that bad.
She burned the turkey out of spite one year. I laugh before I can stop myself.
It feels like stealing something fragile. She loved you, Claire says, watching me closely. Not in a tragic way, in a real way. That scared her. She said you were the only man who made her imagine a life she couldn't control. That tracks, I say.
I was very good at offering futures I had no intention of living in. Claire exhales. I don't know what you are to me. I don't either, I say. But I know what I'm not.
I'm not here to replace anyone.
Or rewrite anything.
I just don't want to lie anymore. She studies me, then nods once.
Okay is not forgiveness. Okay is a door crack just wide enough to prove there is a room on the other side. Weeks pass. Then months.
We build something careful and oddly modern. Lunches, walks, conversations that avoid landmines until one of us steps on one by accident and apologizes immediately.
I meet Lucy.
She meets me with suspicion so refined it borders on odd. You're not trying to be my grandfather, right?
She asks the first time we're alone. No, I say.
I'd failed the audition. She smirks. Good. Over time, suspicion softens into assessment.
Lucy is brilliant and ruthless and allergic to nonsense.
She reminds me of Eleanor without the patience. One afternoon, Lucy asks, "Did you love my grandmother more than money?"
I consider lying. Then I remember my New Year's resolution lasted 14 seconds. Yes, I say. I just didn't know it yet. She nods, accepting this like a data point, not a verdict. Claire and I never label what we are.
Labels invite expectations, and expectations have a history of exploding in my hands. Instead, we become something quieter, present,
Honest.
unfinished. On another New Year's Eve 1 year later, way back at my house.
Smaller celebration.
Just us.
Snow again. Because the universe is unsubtle. At midnight. Claire takes my hand. Do you believe in miracles now?
She asks. I believe in consequences, I say, and second chances that know how to wait. Fireworks blew outside, reckless and brief. Inside, the house feels less like a museum and more like a place someone might forget their keys. Third person. Just for a moment, the old man stands exactly where he once lost everything. And this time, he doesn't choose the exit. I didn't win my life in a lottery.
I forfeited it once, then spent decades paying interest. This, whatever this is, feels earned. And that, I've learned, is the rarest miracle of all.
The doctors call it an episode.
A word designed to sound temporary, like a bad television arc you can skip on rewatch. I call it a warning shot. It happens on an ordinary Tuesday, which feels rude.
If your body is going to stage a coup, it should at least do it on a meaningful date.
I'm in the kitchen making coffee I shouldn't be drinking.
Arguing with myself about whether decaf is a betrayal or a compromise. When the room tilts sideways like it's decided gravity is optional. Third person.
Briefly, the old man grips the counter, annoyed more than afraid, because he has plans this afternoon, and this is deeply inconvenient. Then I wake up in a hospital bed wearing a gown that looks like it lost a fight with dignity. Claire is there. Of course she is. Sitting too straight in a chair that was not designed for people who are trying not to panic.
Lucy is there too, pretending to be unimpressed by medical machinery while memorizing every beep. You promise not to die quietly. Claire says, I didn't die. I reply, I improvised. Lucy snorts despite herself. Figures. The doctor explains things slowly, which is how they talk to children and men who've reached the age where statistics start using your name.
Minor stroke. Minimal damage.
A reminder. Lifestyle adjustments.
Fewer stakes. Less stress. As if I've been carrying stress around like a hobby. After they leave, silence settles in. This one is different.
Not expensive.
Earnest. I'm fine, I say, because that's what men like me say when they're very much not. Claire reaches for my hand. She doesn't squeeze.
She anchors. You scared us. I'm 83, I say. That's my job description now. Lucy tilts her head.
You don't get to scare my MOM.
That's non-negotiable. I look at her, this fierce.
Bright consequence of a life Eleanor built without me. And something inside finally stops trying to negotiate its own importance. I'm sorry, I say. To both of them. To the years. To the silence.
To the man I was who thought apologies expired. Claire closes her eyes for a moment.
When she opens them, there's resolve there.
The quiet kind that doesn't need witnesses. You're not going back to that house alone, she says. That house and I have an understanding. I begin. No, she says gently. You're moving closer.
Near us. We'll argue about details later. Lucy grins. I call dibs on interior judgment. Recovery is tedious. Humbling.
Necessary. I spent weeks learning how to walk at half speed and think without multitasking, which turns out to be the same skill. Claire visits every day.
Lucy comes when she can, bringing homework and brutal honesty. One afternoon, Lucy asks, "Do you regret not knowing me sooner?"
The old answer would have been careful,
Polite, strategic. Yes, I say.
but I don't regret knowing you now. She considers that, then nods.
Acceptable. I sell the house in Connecticut.
People gasp when they hear. They always do when old men give up monuments. I keep the photo of Eleanor.
It goes on a shelf in a smaller place with creaky floors and neighbors who don't care who I used to be. Spring arrives quietly. Claire and I fall into something like a rhythm. Not romance.
Not obligation. Something steadier.
Trust, maybe.
Or practice, one evening.
As we sit on her porch watching Lucy teach the dog a trick it absolutely refuses to learn, Claire says,
"My MOM would like this version of you.
"I wish she'd had the chance." I say. "She did," Claire replies. "She just didn't know it yet." I think about lotteries.
About timing. About how the universe seems obsessed with teaching the same lesson until you stop pretending you've already passed the exam that night. I dream of Eleanor.
She's on the fire escape again, notebook in hand, snow starting to fall out of season.
She looks at me, not angry. Curious. Well?
She asks. I stayed. I tell her. She smiles.
Fade out when I wake up. The future feels smaller, closer,
manageable, and for the first time in a very long life, that feels like winning. By the time summer arrives, my life has been reduced to 3 non-negotiables: physical therapy twice a week, coffee that tastes like regret, and the understanding that I am no longer allowed to pretend I'm temporary. This last one is the hardest. Moving closer to Claire and Lucy turns out to be less dramatic than I feared and more unsettling than expected.
No one applauds. No strings of meaningful dialogue play in the background. Life just
continues.
Which, I'm learning, is the real miracle people forget to advertise. My new place is smaller, annoyingly charming, and impossible to dominate with money. The floors creak no matter how much you spend. The neighbors wave without knowing my net worth.
It's deeply offensive to my former lifestyle. Claire helps me unpack. She does it efficiently, without commentary, which I appreciate. Lucy supervises, which is her way of contributing while also judging. Why do you own so many books you haven't read? Lucy asks, holding up a hardcover that still cracks when opened.
Optimism, I say, and interior design, she snorts. Grandma would have hated that answer. She hated most of my answers. I say, that tracks. Claire mutters from the other room. It's strange, being folded into a family that isn't quite mine and never will be.
There's no script for this role.
I'm not a grandfather, not a father, not a family friend.
I exist somewhere in the margins, written in pencil.
And yet, slowly, those margins start to matter. I drive Lucy to school sometimes. Not often she
values independence like a religion, but occasionally she lets me.
We don't talk much, which is fine. Silence, when chosen, is intimacy. One morning she says, out of nowhere, "Did you ever cheat on my grandmother?" The light turns red. Of course it does. No, I say.
I left before I had the chance to hurt her that way. Lucy considers this. Is that supposed to be better?
No, I reply. Just different. She nods, satisfied with the honesty if not the content. Teenagers are excellent moral auditors. Claire and I drift closer without announcing it.
We cook together. We argue about news headlines.
We watch movies neither of us finishes. There's affection, but it's cautious, like a cat that's been stepped on before. One night, she asks, "Are you in love with me?" The question is calm.
No trap.
No expectation. I take my time.
Old men get this one privilege. No, I say. I care about you deeply.
I admire you.
I'm grateful for you. But love would need promises, and I've broken enough of those to last a lifetime. She nods, relieved.
Good. I don't want to be someone's redemption arc. I wouldn't dare, I say. We sit there, side by side, watching Lucy laugh with friends through the window.
Fireflies blink like tiny punctuation marks, insisting on pauses.
Later that summer, I attend a reading at a small bookstore.
Local writers, folding chairs,
warm soda. Eleanor would have loved it. I sit in the back, anonymous, and for once that feels like a gift. A woman reads a short story about choices that arrive disguised as delays.
The room applauds.
I do too. Hands aching slightly, which feels appropriate. On the walk home, Claire says, "You're quiet. I'm thinking about how many lives I mistook for rehearsals." I say. She stops walking, looks at me. This isn't one of them.
I know, I say.
That's why it scares me. 4 comes. Leaves perform their annual resignation.
My health stabilizes. Not improves, let's not get arrogant, but stabilizes.
I start writing letters. Not apologies. Explanations.
To people who won't read them.
To myself, mostly. One letter is to Eleanor. I never send it.
I keep it in a drawer, like the photo once was. Another new year approaches. The second since Claire walked into my kitchen and detonated a past I thought had finally gone quiet.
This time, we don't plan anything.
No symbolism, no speeches. We order takeout. Lucy complains about the music. Claire drinks champagne slowly, like she's paying attention at midnight. There are no fireworks nearby.
Just the sound of distant cheering and a dog barking at nothing.
Claire raises her glass. To staying, she says. Lucy adds, to not being idiots. I lift mine last.
To choosing the harder timeline. They clink glasses with me. Third person briefly. The old man looks around and understands that this imperfect, unscripted continuation is what winning looks like when you finally stop trying to beat the clock.
I used to believe life was a series of doors you either walked through or regretted forever. Now I know better. Some doors wait, and some, if you're very lucky and very late, open again, not wide, not easily, but just enough to let you step inside and stay.
The last letter arrives in October, which feels appropriate.
Autumn has always understood restraint better than celebration. It's addressed in Eleanor's handwriting. I sit at the small kitchen table for a long time before opening it.
Fingers resting on the envelope like it might still be warm. Claire watches from the doorway.
She doesn't ask.
She knows better than to interrupt the past when it finally finds the right address. The postmark is old. Decades old. The letter was never meant to reach me now. It was discovered while clearing out a storage unit Eleanor had kept under a friend's name. A friend who found Claire. A friend who decided the truth still had somewhere to go. Inside, the paper is thin. The ink slightly faded.
Eleanor never wasted words, but she allowed herself space when it mattered. She writes about the night I left. About how she didn't hate me. How she hated the version of herself who waited for me to change my mind. She writes about losing the baby. About deciding not to tell me because she didn't want love to turn into obligation. She writes about forgiving me without needing me to know. Then she writes the line that finally breaks me. If you ever wonder whether you ruined my life, the answer is no.
But you did shape it. Be careful with that. I don't cry. I laugh once, short and cracked, like something breaking free instead of breaking apart. Claire comes and sits across from me. I slide the letter toward her. She reads it slowly, reverently, like a sacred text she didn't know she'd inherited. She was kind, Claire says. She was precise, I reply. Kindness was just a side effect. That night, I don't sleep, not from fear or regret, but from a strange, buoyant clarity. The story I've been telling myself for 40 years that I was the villain, or the coward, or the man who chose wrong finally loosens its grip. I was a man who made a choice. And then I spent a lifetime pretending that choice was irreversible, so I wouldn't have to examine it. A week later,
I ask Claire to come with me somewhere. We drive to a small coastal town. Wind, gulls, the smell of salt and endings. Eleanor used to bring Claire here when she was little. I know this because Eleanor once told me she wanted to raise a child near water, where the horizon could teach perspective to the edge of the pier. I stop. I'm not here to ask forgiveness. I say, I already know how that ends. Claire waits. I am here to let go of the idea that I was ever the center of her story. I continue.
She didn't live in my absence. She lived forward, Claire nods. She did. We stand there as the tide moves with indifference and grace. The world, it turns out, doesn't need conclusions. It prefers continuations on the way back. Claire reaches for my hand. This time, it's not careful. I don't need you to be anything, she says.
Not family, not history.
Just stay honest. I can do that, I say. It's the one skill I didn't monetize. Winter comes gently.
My health wobbles, then steadies. Lucy gets accepted into a college far away and pretends she's not scared.
I help her pack, offering unsolicited advice she immediately ignores. On New Year's Eve, I sit alone for the first time in years. Not lonely.
Intentional at midnight. I don't raise a glass.
I open the drawer where the photo and the letter now live together. Past and explanation.
Memory and mercy. I whisper. Thank you, not for forgiveness, for time. Third person.
Final. The old man sits in a quiet house. Not waiting for miracles, not fearing endings, finally aware that the lottery was never about luck. It was about what you do when the numbers come up and whether you have the courage to live after that. Outside, the new year arrives without spectacle. Inside, a life unclaimed, unredeemed, but fully inhabited continues.